We have around 650 students. About 80 of those are jazz, and the rest are made up from instrumentalists, composers, and then we have some music technology students as well. About 80% of students who study at conservatoires in the UK do end up working in the music industry in some form, either in teaching or performance or a mixture. Okay? But it's important to bear in mind as we go through the talk that these are the types of musicians that we're surrounded by every day as we conduct our music technology research. Music technology is important to the conservatoire that we work at, and we've had now probably around 14 years of collaborations with leading composers who work with technology. We had a long-running relationship with the late Jonathan Harvey, who we worked with on a number of occasions and updated some of his works. And we've also awarded a number of honorary doctorates to leading composers or big-name composers like Pierre Boulez, Heine Goebbels, Louis Andriessen, and we've made festivals of their work as part of our annual Frontiers Music Festival, which is a contemporary music festival which runs in Birmingham.
Next year we'll be able to do Integra.
Next year, yes, next year we're hoping that our Frontiers Festival will be based around the Integra project. So the first question really I'd like to think about in this talk really is if Birmingham Conservatoire has had a long history of working with music technology and with composers who use technology, then what's the problem? Okay, why did we spend 6 years doing a project to develop some new software for live electronics? Okay, why didn't we just carry on as we were? Okay, the answer really is in the existing tools that people use for doing live electronic music. Okay, so when we start working on a piece that involves live electronics, we'll get sent the score from the publisher of that piece, and along with the score there'll be some materials for the electronics, and most of the time the materials consist of a max patch of some sort or a set of max patches. And if we're lucky, the max patch will work. If we're even more lucky, it'll do what it's supposed to do and what it's designed to do. But normally the case is that we have to fix it or we have to make changes to it. And even in performance, sometimes things go wrong. And we've got a kind of anecdote or a joke which we share, which is that quite often the last save time on a max patch is like 2 seconds before the performance starts. Because somebody was changing it at the last minute. So Max is problematic from a performance practice point of view, but we also believe that it's problematic from a composition point of view and a kind of day-to-day learning of the trade and the craft of live electronics for musicians, because this is a real genuine poster I got off the web. It's supposed to be advertising a Max MSP course aimed at beginners, but yet the background is a complete garbled mess of lines and boxes, and you can't really make out what's going on. And it says at the top, make your computer do things that reflect your individual ideas and dreams. Well, any introductory Max course that I've ever been on, or that I've taught on, and I've taught on many, has never started with making the computer do things that reflect your ideas and dreams. It's usually something like making a counter go up and down, or if you're lucky, making a sine wave get higher and lower in pitch. And so, really, this was the problem that was identified by Lamberto and Luca Francesconi in around 2003, 2004, that through working with live electronics and performers, they identified this problem and they decided that something should be done about it. So they decided to start a project and to apply for some money to the EU to fund the project. So this is how Integra started. It started with this problem, and then it was then a question of how do we go about solving it. So Integra initially had 3 years of funding. It went from 2005 to 2008, and then it was successful in a further 3 years of funding following on from that. The total project value of 3.1 million euros over those 6 years. And you might think, wow, 3.1 million euros, but that's not 3.1 million euros development budget to us. That's covering a wide variety of things, which I'll go into in a second. The project was led by us at Birmingham Conservatoire, and it involved 13 research centres in total, primarily from Europe, which was the requirements of the funding, but also involving McGill University in Canada as an external partner, or overseas partner. As well as the research centres, Integra involved 6 new music ensembles, again from Europe, such as Cours Circuit, Group Instrumental, Bit 20, Ars Nova, so some leading ensembles. And really the idea was of Luca and Lamberto to bring together the best practice of artistic practice from the ensembles and musical practice, the best knowledge from that field with the leading research centres, and to put these people together and kind of shake them up a bit, and then see if out of that could emerge some solutions. Okay, so Integra had a number of strands, the kind of primary strand being artistic. So we're all about, as I showed on the first slide, fundamentally we're about making music. Okay? We're about the concert, we're about what the audience hears. That's what we're primarily interested in. So the artistic component drives everything else. Involved in the artistic aspect, there were 16 commissions of new works, some of which were 20-minute medium-scale works, involving additional media such as film or dance or theatre. And this resulted in over 50 performances, and there's still Integra commissions being performed there every year. We also migrated over 15 works from old technology to new technology. So we took things like pieces involving old synthesizers from the 1980s, and we updated the works so that they can now be performed easily with modern open source software. As well as the artistic aspect, there was a scientific component which was primarily led by the research centres, and the aim of the scientific element was really to develop this new application, Integra Live, which I'm going to demonstrate shortly. And the aim of Integra Live was really to enable the composition of new works very, very easily and seamlessly, but also to support existing works. It also had an education strand. Through the course of the project, we ran 8 workshops in 7 different countries. We ran performer training, so we trained performers in the ensembles in how to use electronics, and some of them have carried on doing that since we trained them with that. We also ran what we called a curriculum pilot, which was actually working with instrumental teachers in conservatoires and music teaching institutions to actually embed live electronics into the teaching curriculum, into the teaching practice. And so the idea is, you go for your violin lesson, but you don't just learn violin. You learn a little bit about technology as well. So you've got violin extended techniques, hopefully, and then also maybe some electronics. And we did that with 13 teachers across 3 institutions in Europe. Okay, and then finally the heritage strand, which I've already alluded to, was about taking a variety of existing works and updating them. And really at the centre of it all is the software, the Integra Live software. This is what binds those components together. Okay. Now, the project ended in 2012. The Integra project, the funded project of Integra, ended in 2012. but we wanted to make a kind of ongoing and sustained commitment to the outputs of the project. Firstly, in terms of curation, we've got all these pieces which have been composed, or we've got these works we've updated. How do we ensure that they're maintained and that they're available to people? So that's one reason to want to carry on working on it, but also in terms of continuing developing the software. So towards the end of Integra 2, we actually set up a lab, research lab, in the conservatoire, which we call Integra Lab, and that is a lab which is currently funded very generously by our own university, and is responsible really for the ongoing development of the outcomes of the project. And if you want to find out more about it, there's the web link. From that link, there's links to the Integra Live website, and we're also on Twitter. If any of you are social media people, social networking people, then you can follow us on Twitter, and that's a good way to get updates about what we're doing. Okay. Are there any questions so far about the project aspects of things before I move on to actually demoing the software? Okay. Right. So, close PowerPoint, close Keynote. Fit on the screen. Okay. Right, so this is Integra Live. Can you just raise your hands if you've already downloaded the software? Yes, everyone. And just leave your hand up if you've pretty much played with all elements of it and you think you're comfortable. You have, okay. I'd be really interested to talk to the people who've spent some time with it at the end and see what your thoughts are. So this is the opening view that you get when you first load the software and download it from the web. And one of the important things to us in designing this really was that we looked at the workflow of musicians, and we looked at the process that musicians go through in composing and performing a work. And then we tried to build that structure into the structure of the application itself. So one of the key things that we kind of identified is that people have the musical works have a kind of life cycle. People start off initially experimenting, working out ideas, things are very open and free, and then it kind of works gradually become more fixed as the composer decides what they want until you get to the performance, where really the piece has been finalised and you're presenting it to the audience in some sort of final form. And we concluded that in order to support that, you need two types of interface within the software. You need one which is open and flexible and you can do lots of things with, and you need one for live performance which is kind of quite fixed and you can't change stuff, so that the save date on the project isn't 5 seconds before the concert. Okay, so we've got these two views reflecting that: the arranged view, which is the kind of composing environment, and then the live view, which is the performance environment. And the arranged view has a number of sections which are consistent. And these are a timeline along the top, which is measured. Time is measured in seconds, and it means you can arrange things in a very structured way with time if you want. And then a number of tracks going down the screen, and then a number of what we call blocks. And blocks are things that encapsulate a musical interaction with live electronics. It could be something very simple, like applying effects, or the block could contain more complex things like control information, envelopes, MIDI mappings and parameter mappings and things like that. So the block is a container for all the interactivity, a self-contained piece of interactivity that means something and represents something. You can have any number of blocks that you like on the track, and you can have multiple tracks underneath each other to support simultaneous blocks. And blocks can overlap, or there can be different lengths, and so on. Okay. So, in its most basic form of operation, if you were just familiarising yourself with the software, or you didn't want to go too deeply into it, you can actually just operate it by dragging blocks from the block library here on the right and dragging them into the main project area, in this main central area. Okay, so I'll just take an existing block here. These blocks in grey are ones that come with the application, and then the ones underneath in purple are user blocks that people can make themselves. Okay, so I'm going to drag a block into there. Okay, and you'll notice a couple of things there. First one is that the block started playing as soon as I added it to the project. Okay, and so the reason why it started playing is that when you drag a block over onto a track, this line here with the triangle at the top, which is the playhead, is positioned at the beginning of the block. And basically, what that means is any blocks that are under that playhead at any time are active. Okay, so as soon as I move the playhead off the block, it deactivates the block. Which the implication of that is that you can choose in your piece to have different things active at different times. Okay, and then the other thing is you probably noticed as a sound file loop starts playing and looping round. Now, you could use the software just like that. You could just have tracks and blocks and drag things on, and you could probably do some interesting things once we've built the block library up a bit more. But in the majority of cases, what you're going to want to do is to actually create your own blocks. And blocks, you can actually go inside them. Okay, so if I click that plus symbol there, that'll take me inside that block, and it'll show me what's actually active in there at the current moment. Okay, so you'll see in there that we've got a stereo sound filer and something that's called a stereo audio out. Okay, these things that have got these names on them, these are called modules. And modules are the fundamental audio processing units in Integra Live. And they can do anything from sound file playback, various types of effects, spectral processing, granular synthesis, various different types of synthesis, reverbs, the typical analysis, the typical things that you'd expect to find in the toolkit of somebody who's practicing in live electronics performance. And these aren't things that we've just randomly made up. We looked at existing works when we were developing the software and what people use. We talked to composers about what they use and what they want to use. And so the module library now is a library of over 60 modules, I think now, that reflect the typical things that people would want to use, and then you can combine them in different ways. So I'll just take those out. So to add a module to the canvas here in the module view, you just drag it across from the module library and place it on the canvas. So we could just take something simple like a low pass filter there, and we'll take two because we've got a stereo sound filer there, so we're going to take one for each channel. Now, as it stands now, if I go back to this stereo sound filer, in fact I can see from the module properties that it's playing. Okay, so the play position's moving forward, but we can't hear any sound at the moment. So there's two things which exist on this canvas. There's the modules themselves, and there's the connections between them. And the connections are what allow audio to flow between the modules. Okay, so I'm just going to connect that back up now, but with the low pass filter in there.
Seems that we are getting mono.
It does actually seem that I'm getting mono. It's coming through. Yeah.
Opa.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so now we've got stereo sound filer in there, looping again, but this time we can hear the effect of the low pass filter. It sounds more muffled. You probably also notice when I click on the modules, what's in this window here underneath, this panel, changes. So if I click on the sound filer, there's something in there.
What happened to the colours?
Oh, I've deactivated the block. So when I've clicked here, you see where the cursor is now, this little speaker. Okay, that speaker always means deactivate or mute. Okay, so and whether you're on a track or a block or whatever, it'll go grey to indicate that it's no longer active. So that's why it's grey. As you click on the various elements, the contents of that panel change, and this is the module properties panel, and these are the controls for each module. So I can select a module, let's turn the sound back on, and then I can change these parameters by just dragging down there. And again, when we were designing this, something we wanted to get away from was something you get in plugins, audio plugins. Say if you're using a digital audio workstation and you've got loads and loads of plugins. There's a lot of overhead for the user because the user has to learn the digital audio workstation, and then they have to also learn all the interfaces for all the different plugins because they're all styled differently. They all have different assumptions about what people want and where they expect things to be. And we wanted to get away from that and provide a consistent look and feel for all of the controls. And we just wanted them to be there all the time as well, not like in Macs where you have the audio and then if you want to control something you have to put a slider on. We just wanted it to just work. Okay, so that's what that is. Now, as it stands, I can add modules on. Let's add another one, just to a bit more interest. I don't know, if somebody names something they think they'd like to hear on, it's a standard effect of some sort. You'd like to put on the
Delay or...
a delay? Okay. So the module library is searchable via this kind of quick search. So if I put delay in here, it'll give me all the different types of delay that we've got in the software. And then additionally we've got tags which you can use to filter the results or filter the module list as well. So I'll go with the ping pong delay because it's quite a fun one. And it also means, what does it mean? No, it doesn't mean anything really. So you'll notice as well, what I've done is, there I haven't had to add the connections for that module because if I just drop a module onto an existing connection, it'll just insert it in line in the signal path of those two existing modules. Okay, now it's ping pong delay, so this is stereo, and I've got two of them going on. So what I'll do is I'll kind of cross connect them like this. Okay, and let's put the audio back on. Okay, and let's give the ping pong delays different settings, so we've not got duplication. Okay, let's put this frequency back up a bit. Okay. Right, so something you'll notice there is that in order to change these parameters, as I'm clicking on things, I have to select the module, then change a thing, then select another one, then change a thing. And that's okay when you're just first adding the module in and you just want to kind of mess about with it and see what it can do and find out what that module does. But it's not something you could ever perform with. You couldn't really sit in a concert and have this clicking around doing that. It's a lot to think about in a stressful situation at a concert, and it's not really very good. You can't see the state of all the controls. So this is really where the live view comes into play. In that what we can do is for any control or for any module, we can add the controls to a separate view where we can see them all in one place. So the idea is that you take what's interesting for you. So I might think, well, okay, sound filer. I'm interested in the playback speed there. That's something I want to play with in performance. Ping pong delays. I'm interested there in maybe wet-dry mix on that, and also maybe the delay time. And maybe on the filters, yeah, frequency is the one I'm interested in there. And maybe bypass on the filters as well. So in order to add these to the live view, what I'm doing is I'm checking these little circles here and adding a tick into them. And if there's a tick in the circle, it means that that module's been added to the live view. So if I go to the live view now, you'll see all of those controls from all of those different modules have actually been added in there and are all accessible for me simultaneously. And that's quite handy in itself, but I can go a bit further than that, and I can actually lay these out in a way that's kind of meaningful and useful to me. So I'm going to group those ping-pong delay things there together like that. I'm going to group the low-pass filter controls together as well, like this. And we wanted to make it as easy as possible to position things, so put crosshairs on to guide the alignments of stuff. And I can't really read what that says, so, well, maybe.
It's a speed.
Yeah, I know what it is, but it's even, I can make them, my point is I can resize these controls if I want. That's a bit big, so I'll make that a bit smaller as well. Okay, so you can build your own performance interface. That's what the live view is. And you're building a performance interface for each block that's in your project. So if I go back in now to the module view and just put the loop back on, and then I can now just perform with these controls, change the mix there, change these filter frequencies. And it's already, I already feel like I'm getting something that sounds a bit interesting. Okay, so that's good. So that's what the live view does. So just to show you a bit more of that now, we'll leave that sound file loop behind, and we'll put something else on here, another block. Okay, so I'll put this texture on. Okay, so this is some granular synthesis. So now in the arrange view I can just switch between those two things. And additionally I can go into the ambient texture block, and I can add some controls here also to the live view. So I'll just do that now for the, oh actually I don't need to. So I deliberately already put them in the live view. So they're already there. So the nice thing here now is that I've now only got the controls for the currently active block. So I've now only got the controls for the granular synthesis. Okay, and if I flick back to the sound file loop with the delays, then I'll get back the controls for that. Now, okay, that's good. It's also a little bit annoying because I'm controlling what's active here by clicking around in this timeline area at the top, but how do I know where the different blocks are to active or deactivate or not? Unless I remember exactly the point of the timeline where they're placed. So we've got an additional layer on top of tracks and blocks called scenes. And all scenes really are is just markers that you can use to position yourself within the piece, or within the project. And of course the position determines what's currently active. Scenes aren't just markers though, just have a beginning and an end. And I'll explain in a minute what the significance of that is. But for now, to add a scene, I just drag in the area directly below the timeline where these rectangles are. So if I just drag in there, that will create a scene, it'll name it scene 1. And I can name that whatever I like. I can call that a loopy scene or something like that. And incidentally, anything in Integra Live can be given a name, which is incredibly useful. this block was originally called sound file loop, but I might want to change this now because it's not just got a sound file player and it's got other stuff. I might want to call it ping pong loop. And by naming things and giving things names, you're also building documentation directly into the project. Okay, and I'll create another scene here over ambient texture, and I'll call that ambient live, because in addition to the ambient texture, I'm going to put on the track below some live processing on the live signal as well as the ambience. So I'll just add another block under here on the second track, and I'll put in it granular delay. I'll just mute this track so I can hear what's going on. Okay, so let's give that a bit more level. Okay, that's not particularly interesting. So let's just let's just do a bit more of that, so we can just build a bit of texture up.
It's coming.
Yeah. Let's put some more delays on there so it kind of builds up a bit, and let's put some reverb on there as well. Okay, so we've got stereo reverb here. Slightly more interesting. And let's put some more feedback on here so we get a little bit of texture building up, kind of complementing the existing granular texture. Okay. Still not amazing, but it's so now, going to the live view now, we've just got two things now. We've got a loopy scene, which is coming from a sound file playback, looping round and round, going through some effects. And we've also got a ambient live scene, which has got some live some granular synthesis, and also some live inputs coming from that granular delay. And then there's some interesting stuff here as well. We've got the so we've got some interesting controls here for the granular synthesizer. These controls are really nice because they've got a min and max setting on them. They're kind of range sliders. And so you can kind of take a range, for example, on pitch transposition on the granular synth. You can give it a kind of window of pitch range, and then you can slide the slider up and down so the minimum and maximum move in parallel, which is quite neat. So you kind of get granular synthesis within a specific range, and then you can move the center point of that range. So we'll just do that a bit now. So. Change the spatialization, the grain size. Yeah, it's a bit too big. But we can transform the sound fairly radically by changing these parameters. There's a couple of different reverb types here. And another nice thing as well in here in this block is that the reverb's got a freeze control on it. So there's a range of things I can do. But that freeze control is really neat. You can do quite a lot with, for example, solar instruments and electronics, just by freezing the sound and then having the player play over the top of it and then freezing it again. You can do some quite nice stuff with that. So we've looked now at how you can add blocks into the main arrange view. We've looked at how you can go inside the blocks and add modules from the module library, and then how we can control those modules using on-screen controls. Well, live view is great because you've got all those controls all in one place, but ultimately with the mouse you can still only click on one control at a time, which is pretty limiting. And I don't think many of you would perform by having a whole range of controls like. Or if you had guitar effects laid out on the floor, you had some sort of effects pedals, you would probably not just turn one thing at once, right? You'd want to control multiple things at the same time. So there's a couple of ways we can do that. The first one is by actually automating the control. So instead of actually having to click on things and drag things to control them, you can actually draw curves and make things change automatically over time. So you do this in the arrange view. If you click on a block, you can then add envelopes to the block, and you can have an envelope for any parameter inside the block. So I've just clicked on my ambient texture there, and I like changing that. That pitch shifting grain pitch parameter. But what I want it to do, I don't want to just have a centre point which I control and drag. I want to actually start with a low pitch range when the frequency is low, the pitches are low, and then gradually expand it out. Okay, so the way I can do that with envelopes is on the block properties panel here underneath. You'll see there's an envelope, something that says envelope, and then a drop-down menu next to it. If I click that drop-down menu, then I can see all the modules that are inside that block. And then if I click on the module I want, it then gives me a list of the parameters for that module, and I can select any one of those. So I'm going to select min pitch transposition as my first one, and that's going to give me an envelope there. Okay, and I'm going to draw some control points in on the block. So you just draw directly onto the block. There's no separate interface for it. And I'm just going to put some control points in there for the kind of thing I want. This is min, so I kind of want that to do that. Okay, and actually more like that maybe. And then I'm going to also add an envelope for the max pitch transposition as well. So I'm going to just go back to that menu, go max pitch transposition. That then gives me an additional envelope there. And again, I can actually just draw in some control points for that envelope as well. Okay, so how do I play that envelope back? How do I actually move the playhead over that envelope? Well, scenes that I showed you earlier on aren't just either active or inactive, or selected or not selected. They can actually be playing or looping. So if I select the actual scene, on the scene properties panel, I've got a state control, and then I can make it loop or play or hold. So by default they're in hold, sorry. If I click on play, then it'll play the scene when it's clicked on, if the project's active. So you get that little bit of transformation there. Okay, I want to make that a bit more dramatic. So a couple of ways I'm going to do that. One is to actually change the settings there. But another way I'm going to do that is actually to, rather than making these lines, because not many things change linearly in the natural world, to make it sound a bit more natural, I'm going to actually give this a curve. So in the bottom right of the block, there's a little button there, and if you look in the info view in the bottom right, it's telling me that thing that I'm hovering over is the curve mode button. And if I click on that, it means that the envelope drawing view is in curve mode, and I can actually make those envelopes more curved. Okay, so I'll do, oops, I don't want to do that. going to do this. Okay, so let's try that. Let's see if that sounds any better or not. Not that much difference, actually. Let's just make that a bit more exaggerated. Okay, but you get the idea. So I'm going to go back into the live view now and just show you one more thing in here. So far I've been controlling what scene is active by clicking on the scenes. So if I click that scene there, it takes me to that one, the loop. If I click on that one, it takes me to the thing. But again, you don't want to be clicking with the mouse to control those things. So Integra Live automatically assigns some keyboard shortcuts to the scenes so that you can just toggle between them using your keyboard. And you can reassign those keyboard shortcuts either via this scene shortcuts window here at the bottom. So I could just drag this shortcut there and I could say, well, I want what is currently scene 2. I want that to be triggered by, because it's ambient live, I want it to be triggered by the letter A, for example. So now if it A, well, I'm already on that scene, but if we go off that scene and go back on again, now A is now bringing me to that scene. Okay, so I can do that way, or I can set the scene shortcuts in the arrange view. Now, in addition to, so far everything's been inside the computer. We've controlled things with the on-screen sliders and all the widgets that you've got in there and all the controls. We control stuff with envelopes, okay, but you don't always want to automate stuff. Sometimes you want to have some sort of tangible interface which you can use to control things as well. So Integra Live supports MIDI, and you can connect any MIDI controller up to it, or any number of different MIDI controllers up to it, to control almost any aspect of it via MIDI. So the first thing I'm going to set up now, I think, is some MIDI assignments to actually control which scene we want. So I can just flick between them by some buttons on here. Now, I set this up just before my talk. I just want to confirm it's just working. Integra Live has a quite nice MIDI monitor which will tell you, firstly, if MIDI's coming in at all. So if I just tap that, it should light up. Okay, it's not, so that's telling me there's no MIDI coming into the application. That's not a problem, we can fix that. I notice most of you have got Macs here. Has anyone ever experimented connecting the iPad up to the Mac? Yeah, somebody has. That's good actually, because I'm going to now show you how to connect an iPad up to the Mac, in case you didn't already know. There's a little bit of trickery in getting it working, but there's quite a few MIDI over Wi-Fi apps which you can use on here as controllers. So I'll take a little bit of a detour into that. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is set up your own network. Well, the iPad and the Mac need to be on the same network as each other. That could be an existing network, but that means maybe the traffic's got to go through all over the place or to a router somewhere. Normally what I do is I set up an ad hoc network on my Mac. I've called this one IntegraNet. And then the first part of what you do on the iPad is connect to that network from the iPad. Once you've got them on the same network, you can then load up a application which supports MIDI over Wi-Fi. I've got one here called MIDI Touch, which is pretty good. The nice thing about this one is, unlike something like TouchOSC, has anyone used TouchOSC? Yeah, so TouchOSC is primarily an open sound control application for the iPad and iPhone, but it does output MIDI as well. The problem with TouchOSC is you have to design your interfaces on the Mac using a separate application. The nice thing about this one is you can design your interface on the iPad and position move things around and edit it in place so you can see exactly what's going on. So I'm going to open that up, and then if you go into Audio MIDI Setup on your Mac, and then go to double-click the network icon, that will take you into the MIDI network setup, and there you should be able to see your iOS device, and then click Connect, and then it's seen my iPad there. So if I move something, yeah, so it's showing me there now. This red trace is showing me that there's some MIDI information coming from the iPad to the Mac. So that's how you set up. That might be useful at some point if you're working with these things. That's how you set that up. So now if I go into Integra Live, if I go into Preferences, I can see in MIDI inputs all the available interfaces. I see Network Session 1's already checked, so that's okay. So if I go back up here now, I should see that. Oh, maybe it's the bug. I know why. That's probably a piece of bad design, actually. Yeah. Okay, so that MIDI icon's now lighting up when I press these push buttons here. And the nice thing as well is I can click on that, and I can actually see what information is coming in. Okay, so that's sending me MIDI node numbers C4 and C#4. I keep forgetting some of the new features we've added in here actually, because in previous versions you had to look under that dialog box to figure out what was coming in and then map that onto your scenes. But now, in this version, which is the upcoming release, there's MIDI learn on the scene assignments. So if I click that MIDI icon there on the scene properties, and then tap that, it's automatically assigned this button to that scene. So I'll do the same for this scene. Click MIDI learn, auto learning, tap. Okay, that's learned that as well. So now I should be able to. It's a bit risky. Well, it isn't working, right?
I think you see in edit mode when you clicked on the second.
Was I?
You might have given the same notes.
Okay. C#4. Oops. So that's this one. C4. Yeah, it should be working actually, it's not working. Okay, well, there's a small bug in that. That should be working, but you're going to have to trust me that...
Because you're not in live mode. Live.
No, I don't think so. No, it's not working. The notes are coming in. For some reason it's not changing scene. Maybe you can see. Probably doing something wrong, aren't I? Oh well, we'll look at this. That's not working. Okay, so in the versions that you've got on your laptops, in any case, you won't have that MIDI. This is actually the kind of upcoming release I'm demoing to you here, which probably does, well, definitely does have a few bugs in it. The version you've got there on your machines, you'll be able to actually explicitly set the MIDI note or the controller number that's been used to trigger the scenes. Fine, there's no MIDI learn on that feature anyway, so that should be fine. So what I'm going to look at now is just mapping, rather than just using this to move between scenes or an external controller like a foot pedal to move between scenes. I'm actually going to show you how to map a control on here, it's like a slider or an XY pad. I don't know if you can see that. Kind of XY scrubbing pad. How to actually map that onto some parameters in the software. So I'm going to create a new block. Okay. And I'm going to go in, and what shall I add this time? A panner. Simple. Okay, I'm just going to add a stereo panner. And I'm going to load an audio file in. Stereo sound filer. Yeah, sound filer. yeah, I'll add two things. I'll add a panner and I'll add a pitch shifter. That's a pitch detector. Okay, and I'm going to load an audio file in. What have I done with my audio files?
Just a little .swap search.
No, I've got a directory full of audio files. It's there. I've moved it. Okay, so it's relaxing. Yeah, there we go. It's a bit quiet. We've got somebody practicing trumpet as well. So, okay, so now I've got some audio file playback. And what I'm going to do initially is I'm going to assign the X position of my XY pad on here to the pan position, left-right pan position of the stereo panner. Okay. So in order to do that, from the arrange view, I select the block that contains the module I want to control, and then on the block we have a couple of different panels here for routing things or for controlling things via MIDI. So if I add now MIDI 1, whoops, yeah, and select my device, network session 1, and then I can select a source channel. I'm going to say NA. I'm going to select a CC number. So I'm going to use CC0, which is actually the default. And I'm going to use the full range of that control, 0 to 127. And then I'm going to now map that onto stereo panner and then panning position. Okay, so now if I go into the block again and just watch that control, if I move the panner there, I can control the left-right pan position from my iPad. That's the difficult way to do MIDI mappings. The easy way is just to select the control in here and then use MIDI learn to change the value. So I'm now going to select MIDI learn for the pitch of the pitch shifter, and now I'm going to use this control, and there you go, just maps it straight away onto that control. Okay, so now well, let's just see what we've got there. What I'll do here actually is I'll change this. Yeah, I'm going to remove this sort of connection here, so that the pitch shifter is in series with the stereo panner. Okay. So let's play this now. Okay, so we've got pitch control. Completely destroying Nils Frown's beautiful playing and the pan position. Okay, so that's going left to right, yeah? Yeah, the channels are inverted. So the channels are inverted there, so there's a couple of ways I could address that. One is I could go to the desk and unplug it. Okay, that's the horrible way of doing it. Another way I could do it is I could actually change the routing here and swap these two over, and that's a bit horrible as well. or I could change it on the interface here. The nice way of doing it is to actually invert the range that I'm mapping to here in the routing panel. So you'll notice, sorry, the MIDI panel. So you'll notice here I've got a kind of source and target here, and at the end of each, well, in the middle, I've got a kind of scaling. Okay, so we've got a source range and a target range. So this is saying map 0 to 127 of this MIDI control number to this range on this parameter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert the range of the pan controller instead of minus 45 to 45 degrees. I'm going to just switch that round so it's the other way around. Okay, so that's a kind of one way of dealing with that situation. And now, if I play, okay, so then it should be the correct way around. Or at least inverted with respect to how it was before. Okay, so we've looked at on-screen controls, we've looked at envelopes, we've looked at live control from an external controller. And this external controller, I'm using an iPad here with the MIDI control app, but the external controller could be anything. The external controller could be an Arduino with some sensors on it. It could be a MIDI keyboard. It could be a Korg Nano controller. It could literally be anything that supports MIDI. And you can have, in this version 1.7, you can have as many active as you like. Okay, so so final thing I'm going to show you now is I've got some external control here, but what if I had two pitch shifters, which I'm about to add now, and I want them to move around in parallel with each other or in some relationship with each other, so that when I control the pitch of one, the other one also changes. Okay, so I can do that. The way I do that, just for demonstration purposes. So now with two pitch shifters there, one of which I'm controlling with my external controller. Now, I wasn't sure then, looking at these pitch shifters, I couldn't remember which one I was controlling, but it's good because Integra tells you. So I clicked on this one, pitch shifter 1, and I saw that the pitch there has got a lock on it. Now that lock means that it's being controlled by something external. It's either being controlled by an envelope or it's being controlled by a MIDI device or something or other. And what that does is it prevents me here from actually controlling it on the screen. And you might think, well, why would you want to do that? But that's actually a good thing, because if you actually set up mapping so that you've got multiple different control sources controlling one parameter, who decides which one wins? They stop competing with each other. And Integral prevents you from doing that. You can if you want to. If I'm demoing this and I just want to quickly change that, I can actually override that lock by pressing the command key on the keyboard, and that'll just override that there. And whoops. And if I'm really annoyed by the presence of the lock, whoops, I can actually command click on that, and I can go delete routing from network session 1, and that will remove the lock altogether, and it will also remove the control routing, so this won't be controlling it anymore. Okay, so that's just a shortcut. So I'm now also going to add. I'm also going to add some pitch shifting on the other in this pitch shifter as well, some pitch shift control. But rather than using a separate physical control, I'm actually going to just route the pitch shift value from the other pitch shifter to the second pitch shifter. To do that, I click on the block, select the routing tab in the block properties, and there I can add a route from pitch shifter 1, pitch to pitch shifter 2, pitch. And now those two things will be synchronized and they'll be set to the same value. So if I add them both to the live view, there. Okay, so now if I just move that control on there, they're both moving in parallel with each other. And I could, if I wanted to as well, change that so that only a specific range was being mapped to the pitch of the other one. Okay, I think I've given you quite a lot of information now. I haven't exhaustively shown you every single thing the software can do, but I'm aware that there's there's a lot to take in. Perhaps it's best if I let you guys now open up your laptops and have a little play with the software, and we'll come around and help you get stuff set up. Has anyone got any questions about stuff that I've said, or about the general philosophy of it, or anything like that?
I don't notice yet.
Yeah.
I see you have a timeline at the top. I don't see beats and measures.
Okay, yeah, good question. Very good question. Why is the timeline got? Well, you might ask why there's a timeline there at all, and if there is one, why has it not got beats and measures? I think that musical, meaningful time representation in here would actually be a good idea. At the moment, the timeline's really just a pragmatic tool, and it kind of is a weird hybrid between a digital audio workstation timeline and kind of markers, like you get in an audio editor or something like that. And so it enables you to have kind of what I'd call synchronized time, like we had with our scene here that plays back, where things are moving forward in absolute time, in seconds, and it also enables you to kind of have something that just runs forever. That just runs indefinitely now.
And I'm assuming that you can line up 2 blocks that just play in series, one right after the other?
Yeah, you can, absolutely. So what I could do is I could say, here, I'm going to have another scene here, and I'm going to have that Nils Frown thing is going to run throughout, and then I'm going to have others, so I can change those block lengths, and I'm going to have a couple of other blocks underneath, become activated as time progresses through the scene. So I won't put anything in there, it's just a question answer, but if I go here now, play, that will play through, and that Nils Frown will carry on, just to illustrate. So that this will carry on playing. Okay, and now I'm in block 2. Though I could have some effects. Now my new effects come in. Okay, and that's quite a common idiom in the way people are using the software. Is what people will tend to do is have an audio file run with some some electroacoustic treatments in and stuff, and then that'll kind of occupy a long stretch of time, and then have live bits coming in over the top of that which change. So that's quite a common sort of way of working with it. You can also do the opposite way around. You could, if I have 3 scenes here, that Nils Frown will carry on playing regardless of which scene I'm in, because that block is still active. So the way it works with time is actually quite flexible, although it might initially seem like there's a single timeline, it's in seconds and it's really rigid. The scenes are quite powerful in their own, in a way, and allow you to do some quite flexible things.
So in a way, you could have at the same time the equivalent of a CD-based piece with a cue-based piece, where you trigger individual cues for different transformations together at the same time.
What does the onset detector do?
Okay, that's another really good question. There's a number of analysis, probably a good idea to actually what I'll do. There's a number of analysis modules. Let's put our old friend on here. So there's a number of analysis modules, and what these do is they enable you to create what's called a sidechain in the audio path, analysis sidechain, and it takes some information from the audio signal, which could be the pitch, it could be the amplitude. In this case, the onset detector actually detects onsets. The attacks, yeah, it detects attacks in the audio signal, and then you can use the routing view to actually then route those attacks to parameter changes. So you could say, if there's an attack, I actually want a note to fire on the physical modelling synth, or I want a parameter change of some description. So if we go in here now,
there can be triggers
There could be triggers, yeah. And also we've got a scripting language built into the software, so you can actually do things. You can do rules. So you could say things like, if the detected pitch is between MIDI note 57 and MIDI note 58, or a certain range, then trigger this effect, or start this audio file playing. If the pitch is in this range, start this different audio file playing. So you set up these type of if then else type rules with the scripting.
Is there any kind of beat detector?
Beat detector, not unless Ballandino added one without telling me. No, there's no beat detector yet, but that's something we'll probably add at some point.
These are features from the Lübeck tract also, right?
They're not actually, no, these are all implemented in Vanilla PD. I'll just say a brief word about the design of it actually from a software architecture point of view. It's a free and open source software. It's available on GitHub. The source code is available on GitHub. If anyone's interested in that, they can just go in there, look at the source, compile it. The software itself is built on top of a program called Pure Data, which I believe that some of you guys are into here. This version of the software runs on top of libpd. So you've got kind of Pure Data, then you've got our own kind of middleware in there, which glues everything together, a library called libintegra. And then on top of that, you've got the user interface. Okay, so this kind of stack of bits of software which work together. And what I'm really excited about in the next release, we're also going to release the Integra framework for macOS. And what that will enable people to do is develop their own application, their own software. If there's any programmers here, it will enable you to very rapidly develop your own applications using our engine. So you'll get the whole Integra module library. You'll get some of the built-in system modules like the player, the timelines, and so on. In a Mac framework, you can just drop into an Xcode project, and you can have a working audio application made in half a day. I'm pretty excited about that as well. So we want to share these things as much as we can.
And you also have plans to make it available for iOS.
Yeah. This version, the next version 1.7 that will come out within the next month, really, the next 4 weeks, I'd say. It's sort of the end of line version of our 1.x series of Integra Live. We'll continue maintaining it and making it more stable and fixing bugs, but we won't put any more design efforts into it or adding new features or anything like that. The reason for that is the user interface that this has is written in a framework called Adobe Flex, which runs on top of Adobe's Air runtime. And this technology really it came out in around 2003, and it was very popular in the mid-noughties between about 2005 2006, but really now it's faded as a technology a bit. So we're going to actually rethink the user interface and rewrite the user interface. Answering Alex's question, we're potentially moving onto tablet devices, putting the whole application maybe on the tablet. And this is really an opportunity for users to feed back to us things that they would like to see in the software in terms of the design of it and the workflow to actually contribute to how the software evolves. So that's another thing, doing this thing in Brazil and coming around you guys is to really get people's feedback about what would be useful in a tool like this. So you're all practitioners, to hear people's ideas. Yeah. You
told that the module library.
Yeah.
It comes with some presets, but you can add new modules. That's right.
You can add your own. You can write your own modules in Pure Data. Okay. So all of these are written in Pure Data, and we provide a module creation tool called the Integra Module Creator, which you can also download. It's a sort of a menu-based graphical tool. Yeah, I can show you it. Yeah.
From the menu in Integra Live.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Not this one, sorry, no, it's the manager.
The manager, yeah, the module creator. This is a tool, I won't go in detail on this now, but it's a tool you can use to create your own modules. I'll just load a module in here so you can see. Open. Live modules. So the modules are all individual files. If I open up the granular layer, okay, here's all the different properties of the module. So it just really to create a module, you're just filling in like form fields, and then you can lay out your widgets here on here your controls. So this is what appears in the module view when you click on the module, and you can literally just draw it in here or drag things around. And so if I save that now and loaded it into Live, the level control would be down off the screen. So it's kind of WYSIWYG editor for that. And then the great thing about it is I can go in here and I can go edit in PD, click that button, it'll open up an instance of Pure Data. I really need a more powerful computer. So it'll open it up in Pure Data.
Oh.
Eventually, there you go. So there it is in PD, and the module creator automatically creates this kind of wrapper for the module implementation. So it'll create these controls for you, so you can test your module. If you go in PD host there, there's the actual module implementation. So if I go there, it's got an ADC, a DAC, and there's the module implementation, granular delay 1. Go in there, and then here's the granular delay. And actually, amusingly enough, this is actually a piece of code we stole from the RJ DJ project with permission of Frank Barconnect. So this is actually RJ DJ's E-grain del read abstraction. But there you go, so that's behind the scenes of the thing. So that part is the actual PD guts of it, and then all of this other stuff here is automatically generated by the module creator, and then you can just test parameters here and to try stuff out and test it. And then once you're done, in the module creator you go test it into Live, it tells me I'm editing it, that's going to continue anyway, and it'll open up an instance of Integral Live, and then load your in development module, or say installing a module in development. Might not work actually, I think what it's done there is it's opened up my Integral Live 1.7, and that was module creator for 1.6. So, but what it will do is appear in the module library. It's just going to hang there now. But that's the workflow in any case for creating modules. So if you know PD, and there's tons of documentation on the web as well. In fact, it's available. Let's just pause with this. I'll show you the documentation quickly. So, yeah, if you go on our website, integralive.org, or just actually with the application itself, there's a couple of different. That's interesting. This is a book we found this morning. Yeah, it's the same one, and Lamberto found it first, and I've reproduced it now. Yeah, but there's a module development quick start guide, which is just it's actually quite a short tutorial which shows you how to make a basic tremolo module, and that's the kind of starting point for module development. You should be able to complete that in 10 minutes, and then if you want to go deeper, there's a full module development guide which is really extensive. It tells you everything you could possibly need to know about module development. So if you're into PD but you want to load your PD patches in something that's got a nice UI and it's got all the features of an Integral Live with the timeline and the envelopes and everything, then develop your own modules, post them on the forum. We might incorporate some of them into the software. So, yeah.
Alex is a good candidate.
Yeah. Yeah, e.g. Alex. Any questions before we
It's
have a little play?
blocks.
So sorry?
It's created in blocks because you created a block, but it doesn't appear in the menu, right? If you want it to write a framework or something.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, I'll just show you that now. Just references. Okay, yeah, so I can create a new block here and I can call it whatever I want, fancy block. And then I can actually, well I've got, command click, sorry, control click, and then I can go export, I can go export, add to block library, and now if I restart the application that will still be there. So then I can just have as many of those as I want. So that's how you add blocks to the block library there. That's a really useful way of working actually, adding stuff to the block library and building up your own, especially if you're an improviser, building up a kind of toolbox of blocks which you can just drag in like that. And one thing I should say as well is that anything in Integra Live can be exported. So I can actually export a track to the desktop, okay? And then I can send that to somebody, so I can send via email my track, and it could contain all audio files and all sorts of things, and they'll be included in the file. I could send that to somebody, and they can then open that in Integra Live, import it into Integra Live. Or I can just, I can export a module, an individual module as well, so I can say flanger. Maybe I've got some settings I particularly like that I've worked on, and then if I go export module, I can then save that module to the desktop, and again if there's audio files loaded or whatever, it'll save all of that, and then I can send that to somebody and share it. So that feature is pretty powerful.
Can you capture like your performance? Say you've written a piece, you love it, it's a masterpiece. How do you?
That is the biggest asked question on the forum. Yeah, how can I record? Which what we found, which we didn't expect, is that the software is actually very popular with the sound design community and people who are doing like game audio and this type of stuff, and what they want to be able to do is use it like an audio editor but for doing effects, and then export the results somewhere as an audio file. It doesn't make it very easy to do that.
Can you at least route it to another software?
Right, yes you can. You could use, the easiest way on Mac really is to use Soundflower. So I don't know if, has anybody used, okay, you're not familiar with Soundflower. Soundflower is, it's a kind of service which is available from Citing 74, which enables you to route audio between any applications. So arbitrary applications, you can route audio between them, and that's the best way on Mac to get audio out of it. You
So
open Audacity
or Pro Tools or whatever, you can just use it as a tape machine and you create your sound.
Exactly. In preferences here, you'd select Soundflower as your audio output device, and then in Audacity you'd select Soundflower as the input, and then it's recording Audacity playing here or playing to Integra Live and then stop. So that's the way to do that. On Windows, there isn't such an option, but there is jack support on Windows. So if you've got an application like Audacity which supports jack, then you can route live audio using jack.
And of course Jack on Linux.
Yeah.
And what about Linux and Windows support?
Yeah. So Windows is fully supported. There's a Windows version available for download on the SourceForge site. Linux, we did initially support it, and we wanted to support it, but Adobe withdrew support for the Adobe Air runtime on Linux, which is a real shame. So
If someone wants to write an interface,
yeah, exactly.
all the rest works.
Yeah, the back end works on Linux, but the UI won't run, unfortunately, because of that move by Adobe. Which is another reason to move away from that framework.
Let's play.
Yeah, have some fun, and then we'll come round and try and help you have fun.